Welcome to Plus One Forward, the podcast powered by the Apocalypse, where we talk about tabletop role-playing games using or inspired by the Apocalypse engine. I'm your MC, Rich.
And I'm your co-MC, Rach. Tonight we're joined by our guest, Briar Sovereign. Hi, Briar. Welcome to the show.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
Excited to have you on. So, Briar, how long have you been playing PBTA games, and what was your gateway?
So I'd say it's a good 3 or 4 years at this point. Back in my university days, I was mostly a D20 person, mostly because that's just sort of what everyone was playing. I think my gateway was probably hearing the Sprawl played on Friends at the Table. I distinctly remember hearing them roll for the games in that and thinking, oh God, every time someone rolls in this system, unless they get a full success, something bad happens. Why would anyone ever roll? And now I understand that bad things happening is why we do this.
That's a great learning.
It's an interesting appeal of PBTA.
Let's jump on over here and read a sitch. Read a sitch.
In Read a Sitch, our guest will spotlight a specific issue of Powered by the Apocalypse tabletop play that they want to cast a bit of a spotlight on. Briar, what did you want to talk about today?
So today I wanted to talk about the Tendencies, Spirits, and Glamour campaign I'm in and how we sort of bridge sessions with play-by-post scenes.
For our listeners who this might be their first episode of Plus One Forward, or they might be brand new to tabletop role-playing, Briar, can you explain what play-by-post is?
Yeah, so play-by-post is, rather than playing, say, like we are doing this recording right now over voice, playing in person at a table or something, you are playing by post. You are taking like a Discord channel, or I guess back in the old days, a forum, and just playing through text, basically. For some people, this is still a thing that involves mechanics. For us, we are just doing kind of conversations, but I know people do both.
Ooh, okay. Is this a weekly, bi-weekly, monthly? How frequently are you playing live?
This is a weekly game.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I know that seems like that's not a huge turnaround to need to fill in the gaps, but I found that it gives us a lot of room to sort of explore connections between characters, explore subjects that wouldn't necessarily come up at the table, wouldn't really have like room to breathe in the way that you would want them to. Especially because obviously when you're doing play-by-post, you have a lot more time to consider what is being said. You have time to go back and edit and think about the conversation in a different way.
You said that you do this via Discord. Is this a Discord all of the playgroup has access to?
Yeah, we have several channels sort of set up so that we have channels for different combinations of characters, through player characters having conversations. We all have one with the GM as well, so that we can have scenes with non-player characters.
Fun. Is this the first experience you've had doing this play-by-post bridging live sessions, Briar, or is this something you've done before?
Definitely to this extent. In our previous campaign, we did a little bit, but that was less a recurring thing and more just me between sessions, sometimes talking to my GM and being like, hey, I really needed to say this to someone in the session, but we didn't have time, so can I sneak this in here in text, please?
That's really cool. It reminds me of my long ago college days where this was when the internet was AOL. And so when people wanted between week live sessions, they came over to my apartment and would say, it would be like, hey, can I have a conversation with so-and-so? And then we would just play it out just like you would over Discord. So much more convenient.
Oh, I did mine on Instant Messenger, like specifically AIM, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. It was a long time ago. Although same set of circumstances, I really want to talk to this NPC more. No one at the table's letting me do it. GM, can I do it on the side, please?
Nice. When you have these scenes, do you tie it to a place, a time, or do you try to keep it loose?
These are usually very in place, and that's sometimes a little bit restrictive in who is available to be spoken to.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that helps us kind of ground them and make sure they are relevant to what's happening in the campaign.
Briar, in your mind, are there any specific qualities of Powered by the Apocalypse that loan themselves well to these interstitial scenes, as it were?
Not necessarily in the mechanics. I do find, and maybe this is just because I roleplay with different people nowadays, a lot of the PBTA games I'm in tend to have a much higher character focus than some other systems. So we often find that everyone has character connections that they just don't have time to explore at the table. So it gives everyone room to be a little bit more self-indulgent in there.
If you trigger a move while in play-by-post, is that something you'll engage the mechanics, or do you guys specifically try to avoid engaging the mechanics and just do the character work?
If we run into them, we do sort of play those out. They don't come up so often, just because we're generally mostly just having conversations, but occasionally they have. Or we just resolve them as usual.
I recently did a bit of this where I've been playing a Blaze in the Dark game that's been reskinned to Star Wars. One of the players and we were like, hey, we've done play-by-post, like, as the whole medium is play-by-post. Why don't we have our two characters have a scene? And it was hard to, like, we carved out the space to start the conversation, but then a week goes by really fast in play-by-post world. And so we're in mid-conversation, and then the live game picks back up. How do you guys navigate that? Like, hey, I wasn't done with this scene, but we need to go do the live table mechanics doing the thing now. How do you negotiate that?
Mostly we just try to be cognizant of, obviously a session is coming up. If it's like a few days before, we try not to start anything new. We try to make sure we can wrap scenes up. There's been once or twice where a scene has overlapped, and we just sort of broadly agree on what the outcome of that conversation is going to be ahead of time, and then make sure we can come back to it later.
I've got a sneaky MC question.
Mm-hmm.
Is this campaign that you're doing the play-by-post for a game that you're MCing for?
No, it is being actually run by the person who designs tendencies.
Do you find the MC is pulling ideas for the next session by reviewing the play-by-posts that are happening over the week?
I don't think so. A lot of these scenes tend to be very, character-driven. A lot of mine are especially just, going to talk to characters I don't have time to in the session because they're not so directly relevant to the plot in direct ways. But it's a lot of me, calling characters who aren't really on scene right now and stuff like that.
Okay. Is this a thing where you could potentially earn experience points if you're heavily engaged in the play-by-post between sessions thing, or do you guys step back from that in case someone can't engage as often as the folks who can?
We generally try and step back from doing that kind of thing, I think, because there is such a differing level of investment in these scenes between players.
With that different level of engagement, have you found that in the live sessions you need to, well, draw a veil might be a bit too strong, but there might be, that happened in the Discord conversation scene type thing that you try to avoid for the folks who may not have read up? Or has that caused any problems in the group?
Not so much, because most of the things that change as a result of those sessions are sort of down to character relationships.
Mm-hmm.
There's a kind of the thing that can change off screen and be a surprise in a more genuine way. We had one fairly early in the campaign where I sort of made friends with another character that we'd ran into earlier off screen, and then it was strange for everyone else to run into that new relationship on screen, as it should have been, really, because it was private.
What are the things that you have most enjoyed about these play-by-post bridge activities between live game sessions?
This is a campaign I'm very, very deeply invested in. Getting to play it once a week is tough for me. So just having access to those characters, having access to my character in the downtime between those sessions is just always exciting for me.
What are some of the things that you might caution someone who's like, hey, playgroup, let's do this thing that I heard about. This sounds really cool. What are some, or not necessarily a cautionary tale, but just here are some things you want to do to establish this so that it works best for the group?
I definitely make sure you're managing people's expectations right. As I said before, even in our group where we do quite a lot of them, there's differing levels of investment in that. People have work that takes them away from their desks most of the day. People have other games that they're in. So I just make sure you have everyone understanding, hey, this is not a requirement. When we do these things, we're going to make them easy for you to read and catch up on. This isn't homework, basically.
Do you have any hints or tricks for encouraging players who might feel a little bit anxious about their writing capabilities and get them to participate?
I would say, generally give them access to characters that they want to spend time with. That's the number one for me.
Briar, thank you so much for sharing this with us. I've discovered something about Rage's play back in the day, and this is a neat method to keep the excitement going through a week and also fully explore particular relationships. So thank you for bringing it to us today. I think it's time for us to open our brains to a particular game. I think the acronym is AAA.
It's AAA. It's a AAA game.
Yeah, that's what I say.
AAA game. That's way better.
Open your brain.
In Open Your Brain, our guest will discuss an Apocalypse Engine game that they've designed. Briar, tell us a little bit about your AAA game.
Armour Advent. I got it right that time. I usually mess up the middle one. It is a PBTA game. It is a fantasy game. It is about playing mech pilots and sort of a cast of crew that support mech pilots, fighting as a resistance against the authority that seeks to control you.
What is the setting when you get into the nitty-gritty?
I try generally very hard throughout the book to keep it broadly setting agnostic.
Interesting.
It's hard to do that because as a writer, I like just throwing in a lot of fluff, a lot of interest in there. But I try to mostly keep things down to assumptions. So obviously you can assume that the game is going to have mechs in it to some degree. It is a mech game. If you somehow play this without having mechs in it, I'm slightly confused, but well done.
Okay, I have to do my nerd flex. Real robots or super robots? What type of mech?
I would say it generally goes a little bit more towards the real robot side of the thing. I'm working through inspirations like Escalone, Mobile Suit Gundam Zeta. You could do Super Robot with it if you wanted. That's just generally not the inspiration space I'm coming from. But yeah, like I said, it broadly works for fantasy settings. I just generally work from the assumption that people want to make their own, so I've never bothered writing sort of a assumed one.
Briar, what mechanics are different in Armour Advent versus, say, someone coming in from Apocalypse World?
Yeah, so the big one I would hit here probably is the absence of harm. A lot of PBTA games following on directly from Apocalypse World have the harm clocks. You know, you'll have weapons that deal 2 harm, 3 harm, 4 harm, so on. I took all that out because I wanted to go for something a little bit more dynamic when it came to combat. So I have the danger system instead. Rather than taking harm, you take on risks, you take on perils, and those affect how well you are able to defend yourself. Risks are sort of more temporary things. A lot of roles might put you at risk. They are the kinds of things you can fix sort of in battle. That might be you get disarmed, you lose a weapon, you lose your footing, someone pisses you off really badly. They're all things you can do in the minute. You can make a move, you can do something to fix that. Perils are longer term things. They are stuff you want to fix in downtime. That's your weapon got broken. Somehow you ran into some kind of social consequence that is going to take time to work out and fix. And you have to do that in downtime. The way those come together is that if you have 3 of those, you are defenseless, and then you're actually open to taking serious consequences from moves. Up until then, it's assumed that you are fighting fit, you're ready to defend yourself. But once you've got 3, you need to start watching out.
Do you find removing harm from the game encourages the players to take more drastic, exciting, cinematic, if you would, actions?
I would say so, yeah. One of the things I was trying to model with it very well is like the back and forth of combat in a lot of like anime shows and things like that. Especially with risks being the baseline and being fixable, I think it encourages people to, take risks, so not to make a pun out of it, but to take on damage to themselves that they can fix during that fight and keep going. I know that the difference also isn't necessarily about severity, it's about how fixable that thing is. Being on fire is probably a terrible thing to have happen to you, but it's a risk because you can put that out. Running out of ammo for your very, very special gun is a peril because you can't get any more. Even though it doesn't necessarily inconvenience you the same way being on fire would be, it's still a problem you can't fix here and now.
That's an interesting differentiation.
Mm-hmm.
Do dangers have mechanical impacts? Do you have minuses to dice, or are they fictionally present only?
Purely fictional, which is why generally when you take a risk, you choose that. You have a little bit of leeway there in sort of picking your own poison. When you're forced to take a peril, though, the other party chooses that, so they can be a bit more cruel in what they take away from you, if they wish.
And are the they in that usually the GM or MC?
Whoever's doing it, really. Like, if you as a player and force a peril on a GM character, you get to pick that. If they do it to you, they're making that choice.
Okay.
What's your favorite move in the game and why?
As my favorite move, I would have to pick out the move I think is maybe like the backbone of the entire system, which is exchange blows. It's a very simple move. It is rolling with either plus clash, which is sort of the stat for physical violence, or plus talk, which is for talking to people. On a 10+, your opponent takes a risk, or you take a risk and put your opponent in peril. On a 7 to 9, you are both forced to take a risk. I think in a lot of ways it's the backbone of the system. It is all about exchanging risks, taking on risks to yourself to do more permanent harm to people. And I think it being split both between like physical combat with Clash or through social stuff like Talk makes it clear that risks and perils don't have to be physical.
That's interesting, because now I'm thinking of a peril that would be like socially based. Do you have a good example of one of those?
Yeah, actually, the last time I played my own game, I was a player in it. And I had the peril Self-Righteous, which I held onto for a good 4 or 5 sessions just because I thought it was very character defining for that person.
Oh, I could see that being really interesting to resolve at downtime actions.
Well, Briar, all this talk about exchanging blows makes me want to try out a AAA game here. What do you think about us acting under fire and getting a chance to play with some mecha stuff?
That sounds good to me.
It is time to act under fire.
In Act Under Fire, our guest will run a demo or a slice of their game, and so we get the opportunity to play Armour, Astir, Advent. Briar, take it away.
Sure. As a pair of soldiers for the fledgling cause, you've been sent out to a vast desert plain nearby, sort of where the cause has been assembling itself recently to look for a hidden authority base. You've heard local rumors that they've seen troop movement beyond the dunes, but you're the first that have been sent in to investigate it for yourselves. And as you venture through the desert towards where these sightings have been spotted, you see a pair of towering Astirs moving through the dunes, but you very quickly notice that they are not moving away somewhere you could follow. They're moving towards you. What do you do?
Would you like to take a moment to introduce our characters at this point?
Go ahead.
I am playing the playbook known as the Scout, and of course I'll be playing Plussy as that Scout. The Scout is interesting because I was told that we'd be playing in mechas, but my Scout doesn't have a mecha. I have this cool move called Giant Slayer, which gives me an ability to go toe-to-toe with these mecha creatures, so we'll see how that goes.
I'm going to be playing Chantel, who is of the Imposter playbook. Through magic, medicine, or sheer force of will, you took control of your body and made it ideal. This is who you were meant to be, and they'll never take it away from you. She's cocky, has a custom-made jumpsuit, and her magic is like neon beams, because I can't say no to that. She does have an Astir, named Blue Book. Briar, are Astirs like bipedal, or can they be quadrupedal?
The two that are coming towards you for reference are both bipedal. I don't know if you want to match that, or if you want to do something different.
I'm imagining like a canine-like Astir.
That works for me.
Maybe not Chihuahua.
That's good. I mean, you need to be able to take it on, not just annoy it with yapping.
Nice German Shepherd aesthetic.
There you go. I'm into it. Yeah, so even though Plussy is on foot, I don't think he's actually on foot unless I can run super fast. Maybe he's on a little motorcycle or a monocycle. Let's go totally anime. So he'll be zipping along, sees the pair of Astirs that are heading our way. I imagine he's got a little headphone mic of some kind that's just a headband, right? It's not a full helmet because we need to see his face.
Yeah, so these two Astirs are skating towards you, sort of sand kicking up around their feet as they split off left and right towards... I guess they can't really see the Scout. You're a little bit closer to the ground. You have the ability to go a little bit unnoticed here, but they definitely spot the Blue Book.
Yeah, I think the Blue Book does have these pointy canine ears that go up like... Its weapons are like down at this point. It's very sleek, but the ears are up like radar, and it's going to... as the two opposing Astir show up, focus its ears on the one to the left to get sort of a sense or a read as to what our opponent truly is like.
Sure. Do you want to give me a read the room then?
I would love to give you a read the room.
That is plus sense.
That is a 10 on read the room.
Excellent. So, if you see on the moves tab, we have read the room there. You get 3 hold to ask questions from that list.
I think the first thing Chantel is trying to sense with the Blue Book is, what is this Astir's approach?
So you said the one on the left, right?
Yeah.
That is a profane Astir.
And for our listeners, what does a profane Astir mean?
Profane is the approach of those who consort with the unkind and the forgotten, which is effective against the natural forces of our world, and as such easily smothers elemental magic. Divine magic, in turn, obviously much more effective against the profane.
Interesting. And what is being obscured or overlooked here?
What is being overlooked or obscured? I would say what is being overlooked is Plussy, the scout. They clearly have not noticed them. You get a good read on their senses, their magical read on the situation, similar to yours, and you are the only person they notice right now.
All right. I'm going to continue to hold 1 right now to use a little bit later for another question.
Sounds good.
I think chasing the one on the left, knowing that I might be a little bit outgunned, let's make a dive for it.
Sounds good. So that sounds like exchange blows to me.
That sounds like a clash for sure.
Unless you're trying to talk them down, yes.
No, I'm not trying to bark at it, sadly. My dice are hot today, so that's a 13.
Nice.
Wow. So, on a 10 plus, either your opponent takes a risk or you take a risk and put your opponent in peril. I will note that these are not quite up to snuff as far as you go as pilots. You know they will take a few less dangers than you might be able to.
Oh, I definitely want to put it in peril. I'll open myself up if it means getting the other guy in a worse position.
Hell yeah. In which case, you choose both.
Nice.
So I think the peril I'm inflicting on this profane Astir is going to be insecurity, because I'm going to land a pretty massive blow, and being elemental based, that's not the likely outcome.
Mm-hmm.
The pilot in there probably thought they had the upper hand immediately, and I'm going to go and take out one of the legs, or try to, and skid past, but I'm also overexerting myself. So I think my power levels are going to be a little bit uneven and sort of uncertain power supply.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think the one that you've hit, they stop splitting off, and that one peels back in behind the other one, clearly shaken in their confidence of going this one alone. Would our resident scout like to make the most of their very hidden approach?
I would love to have those two Astirs continue to ignore me until I can find a point to strike decisively. I'm looking for the ability to hit them when they have no defenses against me.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So imagine the little motorcycle zips along the sand, looks like I'm running away, then I flank around, and I come up with my big gun. That's my hope.
If that's what you want to do, that could still be exchange blows. It would just be a flanking maneuver rather than directly combating them.
Okay. Then let's do that. It feels like it's clash, which I'm not super good at, but I'm not negative.
I'll go ahead and give you advantage. We've established that you're already hidden.
Cool. And then for folks, just to clarify, that means I'm going to roll 3d6 and take the best
Take
2?
the highest 2, yes.
Awesome. My best 2 dice are a 2 and a 1 plus 1, making it a 4.
Oof.
Oh dear. Okay, so you kind of crested the dune in your little bike, your little motorcycle. Wow, we really had to run into a 6 or below in this one, huh? Couldn't just have a nice smooth sailing. I think you're going to have to take a risk as you sort of come over the top of this dune, and maybe you just didn't quite have the angle going around them that you thought they did, but they both sort of turn from the course they're taking around the Blue Book and adapt to make up for where you are as well. You are no longer quite as hidden as you were.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Chantel, they made me.
As always, when you take a risk, it is up to you exactly what that is. The risk could be noticed. It could be that you're angry that you've gotten noticed. It's all about what you're going to have to do to fix that.
Let's say that by being noticed, plus he is exposed, and he either has to fight toe-to-toe with them or duck out and look cowardly, which he's probably not going to do.
Okay, so these two Astirs are sort of redeveloping their position based on the new information. Who wants to do something?
I had to go and get yourself noticed. From Chantel's perspective, is it clear these two opponent Astir have noticed him?
Yeah, they were clearly moving to sort of try and flank you, but have now stopped doing that because there's another combatant on the field.
All right, well, all attention should be on me and not my buddy on the monocycle. So, crouching down, Chantel is going to launch Blue Book at the Astir she hasn't hit yet. The one that was approaching by the right.
Hell yeah.
And I'm going to use Bullheaded, which is one of the playbook moves, which is you may take a risk, take advantage on your next roll, because everyone knows I'm brash and liable to put myself in danger to get the job done.
That sounds like an exchange blows to me.
So that was not quite as good. That's only a 10.
That's still a 10 plus. So once again, either your opponent takes a risk or you take a risk and put your opponent in peril. This was the one that hadn't been attacked yet, right?
Yeah, so I am going to not take a risk because I think at this point I have to take a risk because I'm going to be overextending myself again.
Mm-hmm.
So the risk I'm taking from that is we already have uncertain power supply. Let's go with more of a social one, which is a battle rage.
Ooh. Okay. Enraged.
And the risk on this Astir that I hit, I think, is going to be loosened shoulder joint, because I think Chantal just goes and tries to knock the thing high up on the side. And almost like if you dislocate a shoulder, maybe it's dislocated shoulder. That feels a little bit like a risk. Do you think that's more of a peril?
You got a 10 plus, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
And you took a risk, right?
Yeah, I took a risk to get advantage, which I used. But
Right. Okay. No, that sounds like a risk to me. That's the kind of thing I think you could push back into position, probably. If that's okay with you?
That's fine.
Okay. So, this second one, which was previously unharmed, very clearly reels away, back steps as you assault it. You definitely get the feeling that these two were not expecting to run into opposition. This was just a quick scouting trip. They were not supposed to run into anybody that can fight back. I think they start retreating. As a group, these two are defenseless. Would someone like to do something about that?
I would love to strike decisively now that they are trying to flee.
I thought you might.
I was going to say, I'm encouraging you over comms at this point. Shoot them, Plessy, shoot them.
I might pull it off since they're not looking at me. Cool. I will strike decisively against one who is defenseless. I'll be rolling plus clash.
Yeah, they are defenseless as a group. These were a small squad.
Okay. That's a good bit better. That would be an 8 plus 1, making it a 9.
So, on a 9, you succeed as above. So you strike true. Director characters are killed, forced to retreat, or otherwise removed as a threat per the fiction. If this had been a player character, they would roll bite the dust. But on a 7 to 9, you have to choose one. You overreach or underestimate, taking a risk. You waste ammo or words, losing use of a weapon until you can rearm, or losing the weight of some bargaining chip or piece of leverage. Or you strike carelessly, causing collateral damage beyond your expectations. Which one interests you?
Oh, it interests me to waste ammo. So I'm imagining that the scout, the giant slayer ability that he has, his move for Plessy is he has this big honking gun. And maybe he already fired earlier during the miss, and when he fires this time is starting to overheat, or maybe he has just wasted the ammo. He didn't have as many shells as he thought he did, and so yeah, he's like, "Oh, I'm out. I hope they keep running."
Well, you got the success, so I think as you are spending out this last few rounds that you have, the two are doing sort of serpentine as they move away from you, and just as those two serpentine paths cross, you manage to get off that lucky shot. And you take both of them down. Though your ammo supply looks a little bit worse for wear after that. And these large Astir sort of collapse down into the sand. And maybe, if this was a longer campaign, you could go find out where that base was from them. That's where we'll have to stop for now.
That was pretty fun, Briar. I have to say, a little surprised to find out Briar Mechs. Boy, there's some really cool, interesting stuff for a setting neutral game. You've got a little bit of profane and other magic, and that's cool. A neat little combo.
Well, like I said, it's hard to not put in those little bits and pieces.
It's fun. I like it. Thank you so much for running that brief little AP for us, Briar. That was fun.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it actually matched Rich and I's play styles perfectly. It's so cool that way.
Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Briar, if our listeners want to find Armour Astir Advent or follow more of your work online, where can they find you?
So, they can find me on Twitter at Wagazel. They can find everything I make in the tabletop space, at least, at wagazel.itch.io.
And we'll have links in the show notes to both your Twitter and also to your itch store. Briar, thank you so much for coming on Plus One Forward and sharing with us Armour Astir Advent.
Thank you again.
Thank you for having me.
Plus One Forward is a production of the Gauntlet community, Richard Rogers and Rach Shelkey. You can find us at gauntlet-rpg.com or follow us on Twitter at @+1FWD. If you would like to support our show, visit our Patreon site at patreon.com/gauntlet. The games mentioned on this show use the Apocalypse engine, which is a creation of Vincent and Magay Baker. The music for Plus One Forward is from the Savage Aural Hotbed CD Gomi Daiko. The songs used are Gomi Daiko, Metal Version, and Drowning Attitude. You can find more amazing tunes by Savage Aural Hotbed on their website, www.savageauralhotbed.com.
Listeners, we want to let you know that Hearts of Wulin, our PBTA game of wuxia melodrama, is now available as a PDF on DriveThruRPG. Hearts of Wulin emulates films like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon and Shadow, and TV series like The Untamed and Ancient Detective. It is inspired by the Chinese martial arts novels of Jin Yong and Gu Long and their many adaptations. In these tales, romance is as dangerous as a blade. You can buy Hearts of Wulin at the Gauntlet store on DriveThruRPG. You can find more information and resources for it on our Gauntlet blog, on the Gauntlet webpage at gauntlet-rpg.com.